I'm Helen Van Wyck, and welcome to my studio. Why don't we start out by recapping last time we met, because this painting is a continuation of what I did before. And this time I'm going to impart color. Remember last time we met, I only worked in acrylic and I only worked in black and white. This, maybe if I step aside and we can have a view of this painting so far, it's just the beginning, and my subject matter in line, you can see that this is void of all color, and that is really quite colorful. In fact, I think you can see that the drape is a yellowish white in relation to the vase that looks almost blue, almost something. Well, I'm not going to do them that way. I'm going to make my picture all the same color white. Why? Because I think it will tie together better. If I have this one kind of white and this another kind of white, it'll be looked at separately rather than enjoyed as an entire composition. And composition is always the forerunner or the most important factor of the success of a painting. All right, so why can't we use pure white, the pure white that we have on our palette? Because that's not what we paint. We don't use this to do this because we use this to emulate the effect of lighting on the subject. Now, I always see a warm light. In fact, I always see a hot light. I like it that way. I always feel better in a warm environment than in a cold one. So I always put a little bit of warm color into my white. What is a warm color? Into this, I'll put anything in it that's going to make it look like a warm off-white. So I could put maybe a little bit of orange in it, but maybe that's going to make it look like orange instead of white. I could put a little bit of yellow. Then it would look like yellow instead of white. So it would be better to put this and the black together. I better tilt that this way so I don't get a glare. Put the white and the black together to make a to make an off-white, just a little less than this, and add one of these warm colors. You see, I have these bright warm colors, and I have these colors. This is yellow, orange, and red. Here's another yellow, orange, and red, but they're so low in intensity, they'll just kind of bless the gray rather than color the gray. So why don't I start and talk about color, the color white, as I paint this white composition. My underpainting is acrylic and dry. I like a warm environment. Some like it hot. And so why don't I take my rag with some painting medium and some burnt umber and some yellow ochre and get this far and put this down and add the warmth in the easiest way I know how, and that's to rub it on. I like it better already. This not only imposes some color on the whole gray rendition, it also wets it. Wets the canvas with my painting medium, linseed oil, Damar varnish, and turpentine in equal parts, which will make it seem as though my paint goes on very easily. Well, it will be going on easily. Now, where to start? I think it would be best to accent the whiteness of the drape and the picture by imposing a little bit more color on the negative spaces. So I'm going to take more burnt umber in a big brush, a little bit of burnt sienna. You'll notice I'm calling out the colors I mix because I've had so many letters that say, call out the colors you mix. I really would like to say, no, I won't. and I never will, because these colors are the colors I would use to do today under TV lighting. And TV lighting makes me have to drift away from maybe the colors I use in my own studio. So it isn't a good idea for me to call out the colors I use. But I've gotten older and I'm more mellow now. And so if you want me to call out the colors as I mix them, I certainly will. Just that I'm a little bit frightened as to where you're going to put them. I would rather have you understand the thinking I put behind using a color, because that will really service you better as a painter. I'm getting a glare up here, getting an awful glare, but I'm using, down here I use burnt umber, here I'm using burnt umber and burnt sienna. Of course the color looks different because it looks that way because I'm working on the gray underpainting. Look how that is on white. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, I like that little warmer color that got on. Now, this is one way of getting a nice dark, rich color. If I put these two colors together to try to cover a white canvas, I'd probably have to use all of that paint. By putting those two, that mixture of burnt umber and burnt sienna together and applying it over an already darkened area, I don't have to use as much. And there's a certain luminosity that comes as a result of this. I think I did mention the last time we met that we were in Holland and I studied with Rembrandt, and I could see that he did a lot of this kind of thing. And I have to tell you something that proves it. We were at a museum where there was relics of the painter's equipment in the 17th century. And there we found a leather piece, square piece of leather, and and the corners came up like this, and a piece of string was wrapped around it. And in here, in the pouch part, was a nail with a head, and that was a tube of paint. And the amount of paint that was in this little pouch was about the amount that I have squeezed out right here. Right here. Can you imagine that little pouch had just that amount, and we squeeze the whole thing out on our palettes today? So it's true. He had so little and did so much, and we have so much and do so little sometimes, unless we take up the technique that they used. And that's the technique of planning out everything in values and adding the coloration on top when you can keep your mind on color. I don't have to even think of the composition anymore, do I? I've got it all worked out. Yes, here we are. Look at this and this. These, I just said, I'm going to make them more the same color rather than as different as they look. And I see it against that, well, tan background. And I put the brown in, which is a dark yellow. And when I look back at it, it just looked too drab. So I had burnt sienna and burnt umber just without anything in it. And now I've just sneaked some white. See this white? I have that in there. And I repainted it. And you can see that it imposes a little bit more of a luminosity of color in there, which I like better. That's the whole trick about painting, is to do it and see how it looks and say, I like it. Or do it and see how it looks and say, ew, I don't like it. Well, you certainly shouldn't be discouraged. You can always fix it. You know how you can fix it? You can make it worse. but I'm sure if you have some artistic judgment, you're going to make it better, and I know you all do. So now I have a chance to start painting some color, or working not only it's already yellowish looking, working the color and more of the quality of the texture of the picture. Because this is what since I don't have to think about the drawing and I don't have to think about the position, all I have to do is think about it. So now I've taken some white, just going to wet that down a little bit. Take some white. See how white and brown gets it too brownish looking. If I put a little black in it, just a little bit of black, how gray that looks. I almost made it too gray. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in it. Well, I have no idea how this gray, this brush is shedding a little. I don't have no idea how that's going to look. You don't either. Let's try it. To me, that just seems like a nice type of paint to mask this in with. It doesn't have to be thick. Look, I've even been wiping it down on my rag. Now, where the light hits, if light hits an area, it's going to be yellowish. Why? Because I say so. We have a warming sun. Even on a cold day, you can be warmed where the sun is shining. And so this must mean that we have a warm light. And white is going to look more illuminated if it's a warm white than if it's a cold white. But if you want to make it a cold white, sure, it's your picture. Remember, it's always your picture. You could do with it what you want.